Hey, storyteller. A well-executed plot twist can make a reader gasp, cry, or even throw your book across the room, then rush over and pick it up to devour the rest of it. Most important of all, it can keep them talking about your story long after they've finished reading it. Some plot twists are even a requirement for certain genres, like thrillers and mysteries. Many writing experts and teachers of the craft say that your story's ending should be surprising yet inevitable. This advice, often attributed to Aristotle, is especially true for plot twists, even if they occur in the middle of your story. So, how can you create an effective plot twist that will leave readers stunned but satisfied? Here's a hint, a twist, if you will. It's not all about the action. In fact, the action almost doesn't even matter. Welcome to this week's writer coaching session. I'm Bridget from B Squared Writer Coaching, an author, editor, and your story coach, here to help you make your story powerful, polished, and publishable. You could create the most shocking, mind-bending plot twist, but if the story it subverts isn't already solid, nobody will get far enough into it to read it. To help you make sure your entire story keeps readers glued to the page, I want to give you my free workshop, 6 Essential Elements of a Powerful Story. This free 25-minute video workshop walks you through how to ramp up your characters, plot, conflict, setting, and theme, plus how to make readers experience the adventure and the plot twists with your characters. To access it, just click the link in the description or visit www.b2writercoaching.com/workshop. That's www.2writercoaching.com/workshop. And be sure to stick around to the end of this video so you won't miss this week's Power Up, a super practical action step you can use right now in the story you're working on. Before we get into the tips I have for you on creating plot twists, I do have a spoiler alert. I'm going to be referencing several movies and books in this video that have compelling plot twists, and I will be spoiling the twists. So if you haven't seen that movie or read that book yet, I suggest saving this video to a playlist and coming back to it after you've consumed the stories so it doesn't ruin your experience or spoil the twist for you. Just so you'll know what you're in for, the stories I'll be referencing include The Sixth Sense by M. Night Shyamalan, George Lucas's original Star Wars trilogy, especially The Empire Strikes Back, Gone Girl by Gillian Flynn, and Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire by J.K. Rowling. A good plot twist doesn't just come out of nowhere. To make sure it has the desired effect, we need to build up to it slowly and subtly throughout the story. Drop subtle hints along the way that something big is coming without revealing what the twist is. I know, easier said than done, right? To lay the groundwork for a plot twist, you can use foreshadowing, symbolism, or recurring motifs. These elements should be introduced early in the story and then gradually build upon each other as the plot progresses. For example, if your plot twist is that the protagonist's best friend is actually the villain, as in one of the Spider-Man movies, you could drop clues such as the friend's suspicious behavior or cryptic comments throughout the story. These hints should be subtle enough to not give away the twist, but obvious enough that readers will pick up on them during a reread or remember them after they've discovered the twist. For example, in The Sixth Sense, clues are sprinkled throughout the movie, showing the main character's detachment from those around him and to some degree to his environment. On first viewing, this seems to just indicate his loneliness and emotional isolation after the trauma of being shot, and perhaps his guilt over not paying enough attention to his former patient who shot him. The viewer never expects that he is actually a ghost, unseen rather than ignored by those around him, and in some cases unable to interact with the environment in the way he would expect. One of the most effective tools we can use to build toward a plot twist is misdirection. Like a magician during a magic trick, you can distract your reader with one thing, then surprise them with something else. You can do this by planting false clues, including red herrings, or using misdirecting dialogue that says one thing and means another, or has double meanings. For example, let's look again at The Sixth Sense. The twist ending is foreshadowed throughout the film, but the audience is misdirected by the focus on the relationship between the two main characters and the actual protagonist's perception. One fantastic example of this occurs when Bruce Willis's character, the protagonist, thinks his wife is cheating on him because she ignores him often, and then he sees her meeting another man at a restaurant. This is fantastic misdirection because the audience only sees him try to speak to his wife a couple times and she turns her back or doesn't respond. And the way she's acting, it seems as if she's deliberately ignoring him when actually she just doesn't know he's there. She doesn't see him, doesn't hear him. The most important tip to keep in mind when creating a plot twist is make it matter to the story. We should not include a plot twist merely for the shock value. Instead, the plot twist should contribute something significant to the overall story or change the reader's perception of the story. For instance, your plot twist could lead to or force the character to change his or her strategies, plans, or actions throughout the rest of the story, especially if it occurs somewhere in the middle instead of at the end. It may force the protagonist to stop reacting and become more proactive. The twist could upend the character's perceptions of herself, relationships with other characters, or worldview. The key is to make sure the twist has a profound effect on the plot, someone's character arc, or both, especially if it occurs during the story instead of at the end. If it is a twist ending, it also may impact how readers see the story when they look back at it. For example, if you treat the original Star Wars trilogy as 3 acts of one larger story, the twist at the end of the second film, Empire Strikes Back, changes Luke Skywalker's perception of himself, his enemy, and what he must do from then on. In the twist, the protagonist, Luke Skywalker, discovers that his enemy, Darth Vader, is really his father, instead of being the person who killed his father. We immediately see Luke begin to question everything he has believed about good and evil and his own destiny. Then, in the third movie, he states that he can't kill his own father. His goal is still the defeat of the Empire, but he now also wants to try to save his father instead of seeking revenge and destroying him. I also have to mention the sixth sense here again. Once we know Bruce Willis's character is actually dead, it changes how we view the entire movie. Once Bruce Willis discovers that he's a ghost, we see these little flashbacks of certain events throughout the movie, and it reminds us of the clues that we missed or were the subject of misdirection. The most effective plot twists are tied to the character's motivations. Every character has a reason for his or her actions, and especially the protagonist has a motivation for seeking the story goal. When writing a plot twist, it's important to consider how that event or revelation will affect your main character's motivations and change his actions moving forward. As we saw in our Star Wars example, a twist that is tied to or affects the character's motivation can lead to a crisis of faith for the protagonist and a change in the way he or she approaches the mission or story goal. Luke's motivation for defeating the Empire had been based on more than just the desire for the greater good of the galaxy. It was originally tied to his desire to avenge the father he'd never had a chance to know. Now, that motivation is flipped on its head, and he wants to save not only the galaxy from the Emperor's clutches, but Darth Vader as well. Are you finding this helpful so far? If so, consider clicking the like button so YouTube will show this video to more writers like you. Now let's explore the second half of our tips on writing a compelling plot twist. Another fantastic way to craft a stunning plot twist is to subvert reader expectations. To do this, take a common trope or cliche and flip it on its head. For example, in the novel Gone Girl, the reader is led to believe that the protagonist's wife has been kidnapped, and many think that he may be the perpetrator, to such an extent that the reader begins to think that might be the case as well. The twist reveals that the supposed victim actually faked her own disappearance as part of an elaborate revenge scheme against her husband. So it takes the trope of a crime thriller and kind of like a sleeping with the enemy type situation where the one spouse is trying to do the other one in, and flips it on its head, making the victim the actual perpetrator of a crime that we didn't even know was in progress. A character reveal can be another powerful way to deliver a plot twist. In this type of twist, something about the character's nature is revealed in a surprising way. For example, in The Sixth Sense, the character reveal comes at the end of the story when we discover that the protagonist is actually dead, and has been throughout the entire movie. This ending came as a complete shock to audiences when they first saw the movie and changed their perception of the entire film. Another character reveal plot twist that sticks in my mind occurred in a made-for-TV movie, the title of which I don't remember. In fact, really the only thing I remember about the movie was the plot twist. It's a story of a woman who had amnesia. She has been married to her husband for years now, and they got married after the onset of the amnesia. The movie opens with her preparing dinner. She starts to chop vegetables and wields her knife like a professional chef. She just starts chopping faster and faster with precise cuts, and then she flips her knife like a knife thrower, and it lands in the butcher block knife holder. It shocks both her and her husband. He made a comment, something like, well, maybe you were a chef before the amnesia. You find out in the big plot twist that she was actually a trained assassin. And it's really shocking because she seems to be just this sweet, mild-mannered housewife who wouldn't hurt a fly. It was just an intriguing story, but the most memorable thing about it was that opening scene, a major clue to her true identity, which was going to be revealed in the plot twist. Another way to create a memorable plot twist is to use a false ending. This occurs when the story seems to be wrapping up, and then another complication happens that changes everything. To create a false ending, start tying up some loose ends. You should have something pretty climactic that happens, and then make it seem that the story is resolving. Then introduce that new complication and basically almost a second climax for the story, getting your character in deep trouble all over again. A great example of this is in Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. The story appears to be resolved after Harry escapes from Voldemort and is teleported back to Hogwarts at the end of the Triwizard Tournament. Harry tells Professor Dumbledore that Cedric Diggory was killed and that Voldemort has returned. Then Professor Moody, who has befriended Harry, comes and takes Harry away from the crowds. Harry's grieving over the death of Cedric and reeling from the trauma of having to face off and barely surviving the confrontation with Voldemort. So Professor Moody leads him back into the school and up to his office, we think to help Harry calm down and console him a bit and get him away from all those staring people and the grief of Cedric's father. But in the plot twist, we actually discover Professor Moody's true identity and that he is the one who orchestrated all the events that led Harry to the confrontation with Voldemort in the first place. So the climax is Harry's confrontation with Voldemort. But in almost a second climactic event, Harry is in danger again, being alone with Professor Moody and discovering he's really one of the bad guys. By far, the most memorable plot twists are those that hit the reader with an emotional gut punch. These types of twists are a powerful tool for exploring themes that cut straight to the core of the reader's heart, like betrayal, loss, and love. A plot twist will have greater impact if it's tied to the emotional journey of the characters. These shocking turns often reveal something about a character's past or present that adds depth and meaning to the story. You can drop subtle clues through character development and the progression of the character's arc to build up to the twist. For example, in The Empire Strikes Back, the revelation that Darth Vader is Luke's father was not only shocking to Luke and the viewer, but it also added a new layer of complexity and stakes to their ongoing battle and shook Luke's perception of his own identity to its core. This film dropped subtle clues to the twist as Luke's character arc progressed. The most obvious one, in hindsight at least, was a training sequence in which Luke fights and kills a projection of Darth Vader. After Luke's victory, the projection's helmet bursts open, revealing his own face, and that he was fighting himself the whole time. That, at first, seems to be the point of the training sequence, for Luke to realize that if he's not careful, he could suffer the same fate as Darth Vader, turning to the dark side and becoming the very thing he hates. However, that's not all the training sequence symbolized. It also hints at Luke's kinship to Darth Vader, not only metaphorical, but literal. Just as a quick reminder, in case you haven't done so already, be sure to grab your link to my free workshop, 6 Essential Elements of a Powerful Story. Remember, just click the link in the description or visit www.b2writercoaching.com/workshop. For this week's power-up, I recommend starting a notes file regarding the plot twists that you want to include in your story, or a plot twist that you're troubleshooting that you've already included and just kind of isn't working. I would begin this file with a brief paragraph summarizing what the plot twist is going to be or what you want it to accomplish. Then we're going to create 2 different lists. First, list why the twist matters to the story, including the ramifications it will have on the plot, character actions, the character's perceptions of self or others, the relationships in the story, and/or the reader's perception of the story as a whole or of a particular character or event. You could make 3 separate lists for this if it helps to break it down like that, or just one big list. If you do make separate ones, for example, you could make a list on how the twist affects the plot, a list on how it affects the main character, and a list for how it affects the reader. Next, let's make a list of clues. Here you'll want to jot down any clues you have dropped or need to drop along the way to hint at or foreshadow your twist. Remember, these should be subtle and can include character actions, seemingly offhand comments, cryptic statements by another character, imagery, suspicious actions of others, odd occurrences, etc. You may be wondering why I'm suggesting making the list of clues after jotting down the ramifications of the plot twist. That is because once we know how the plot twist will affect the story, it can inform and help you figure out which kinds of clues you need to drop along the way. What if you know you want to include a plot twist, but you're having trouble coming up with a good one or one that fits your story, or just figuring out what to do for that? Well, most plot twists center around conflict, whether the twist is an on-stage conflict in and of itself, or it's a revelation that causes an internal or external conflict for the protagonist. For tips on the various types and sources of conflicts you can use in your plot twist or throughout your story, check out this video, and let's power up your storytelling.